What if one day you woke up inside a game, not as the hero, but as a failing student at the prestigious Sylvania Academy? A student destined for trouble, yet somehow you rise to become the sword master who saves the entire world. This is exactly what happens to our story's main character. Meet Ed Rothsteiler, the black sheep of a high-ranking noble family. He had previously ruled over the Sylvania Academy as a king, but his family disowns him, his dorm kicks him out, and everyone around treats him like yesterday's cafeteria leftovers. And the best part? He's you. It feels to our poor protagonist that fate is mocking him. His classmates whisper around him as they see him sitting on a bench with his luggage in a state of helplessness. They believe it serves Ed right for tampering with the entrance exams for the new students. But Ed Rothsteiler doesn't believe he deserves this. It is because the arrogant Ed Rothsteiler this world refers to is not him. He is our protagonist from a different world, transported into this game titled Sylvania's Failed Swordmaster. It takes place at Sylvania Academy and also happens to be the protagonist's favorite game. When this kind of thing happens in comics or novels, the main character usually becomes the eldest son of a rich family, a genius, unruly heir, or an SSS rank hunter. In other words, an overpowered character. But our protagonist woke up as a third-rate villain with minimal screen time who gets kicked out of the dorms at the start, Ed Rothsteiler. In other words, he became the worst character with the worst timing possible. He blames his fate for putting him in such an unfair position. He complains about how he has always led a frugal, unassuming, and modest life. But he gets interrupted by his classmates, who dismiss his complaints as atrocious lies. As they leave, he sighs. He looks at his stats panel, knowing this is just the tip of the iceberg of what makes Ed Rothsteiler the worst character. First of all were his stats. Despite being in the magic department, his intelligence is ridiculously low, and the strength stats are pathetic even for a noble. Even farmer NPCs have at least 5 points. But he remembers that in the game, Ed only appears at the very beginning as a cowardly third-rate villain. He barely even remembers him and has no idea what will happen to him later. But his eyes widened as he remembered seeing him in the end credits. Ed Rothsteiler ended up as a beggar on the streets. The protagonist guesses it makes sense since Ed was a good-for-nothing rich boy with no life experience who was suddenly kicked out and left to fend for himself. It is a miracle he stayed alive, but one thing the protagonist could not understand is why he had to end up as this character. But now there is no way of knowing, and it doesn't really matter. But he refuses to accept this ending. He's a gamer, and gamers don't quit, and so he immediately springs up from the bench, determined to survive. The academy spans across all of Akan Island, making it more like its own town than a school. Our protagonist, now Ed Rothsteiler, makes his way to an undeveloped forest area northeast of the academy. He ended up walking for half a day trying to escape the looks he was getting from the other students. But it was more than enough time to get a grasp of the situation. He knows if Ed just got disowned, that means this is the start of the game. Fortunately, while he might have gotten disowned, Ed has not gotten expelled from the academy yet. This is a vital key point. In this setting, Sylvania Academy is an incredibly prestigious school that guarantees a bright future as long as you graduate. And since the game takes place here at the academy, he thinks he can make use of his knowledge from playing through this game 5 times. As long as he manages to graduate, he will be guaranteed a much more comfortable and grandiose future than he could have ever dreamed of in his past life. This means that his goal will obviously be graduating. The issue is the exorbitant tuition fee. He estimates that this semester must have already been paid for, so if he just manages to earn a scholarship for next semester, he will be all right. But the main problem is if a scholarship is even feasible with these starts. He feels like not feeling would be a huge achievement on its own at this point. He makes a note of the things he needs to survive: food, clothing, and shelter. Ed guesses he will be okay for at least a week with the items he has in his luggage. He has enough to be there, but food and shelter are the main issues. He decides to find a place to sleep and something to eat for tonight. He thinks getting a part-time job will not be easy since Ed has a terrible reputation. Plus, he cannot just go back to the dorms. It looks like he will have to stay in the forest for a while. A bonus point was that there is a small stream nearby. 10 days were left until the start of the semester. Ed begins to try building himself a shelter to live in within that time. Thankfully, he can still use magic. But after cutting off a few branches with wind/magic, he was already exhausted and even hungrier now. As his stomach growls painfully, he curses the dormitory for not letting him have a meal before kicking him out. He had no idea using magic made you so hungry. He knew the situation was pretty bad. Just then, he remembered something his grandfather told him when he was a kid. Whenever food was scarce in spring, he would eat bark from the mountain. Ad does not care what it is as long as it is edible. He uses Ignite My Check to steam the pieces of bark. After that, he seized the pieces as chicken and began to eat them in satisfaction. But as soon as he tries to swallow, he throws up. The third day soon arrived, and its face had turned extremely pale. The conclusion he came to after a day of starving and 2 days of throwing up is that port should only be used as building material. First, he needs to erect a frame to support the rest of the wood. There are 4 posts, but he only has 2 hands, so he knew it won't be easy. And he was obviously right. But he does not give up and tries his best, finally managing to build the base frame of his shelter. However, he still had a long way to go. He used his existing clothes to sleep on, as he could not sleep on the dirt. The next day, he finally manages to build a shelter for himself. The game portal pops up in that moment, revealing that the construction has been completed and his crafting skill has increased. It seems like Ed never noticed this, having lived as a noble all his life, but he's actually more expert in crafting than in magic. He is a level 4 handicraft, surprisingly, and right now he needs crafting more than ever. He ends up making a makeshift harpoon to hunt for actual food. He had spent 2 days on an empty stomach overexerting himself in manual labor. It is surprising considering he really should not be able to move a muscle at this point, but it is his desperation that keeps him going. It gets a craving for fish. He uses his desperation to catch some fish and then uses Ignite Magic to cook them. A week was left to go till classes began. Ed internally consoles himself that he needs to keep surviving like this. If he makes it through this week, he should be able to start attending classes. But Ed was so focused on surviving that he completely forgot about something important. He had forgotten that the main characters of the game exist in this world. But he never expected to run into her out of all people, Princess Pinia. She looks down at him in fury, asking if he still has not left this place. She is the person responsible for getting Ed Rothstaler kicked out of his dormitory. Ed Rothstaler is a villain who appears at the start of the game. He tries to use his status as a noble to harass Isla, the protagonist's childhood friend, and is immediately punished for it. Unable to let go, Ed then attempts to get his revenge against the protagonist by tampering with his entrance exam to keep him from entering the academy. However, he ends up getting caught, and the one who catches him happens to be someone who hid her identity to take the entrance exam. She is the 3rd princess of the Kroll Empire, Pinia. She possessed the ability to activate insightful eyes, which helps lay bare the target's lies and schemes. Pinia catches Ed in the act, but he swears he is innocent until her insightful eyes see through his eyes. And so he gets kicked out of the dorms as a result. While everyone at the academy might hate Ed right now, she is the worst person for him to run into right now. Ed tries to clarify that he is technically still a student here. But Pinia firmly tells him to get out, as she cannot withstand watching a despicable person like him be anywhere near the school. She threatens to talk to the headmaster and have him expelled immediately for the crime of committing a misdeed as a student of the academy and attempting to ruin someone's future. While Ed felt uncomfortable by his sudden appearance, he was more focused on the food he had finally managed to catch after 3 days of starving. It was apparently burning to a crisp. His food burning is bad enough, but his future is also in great danger right now. She had expected the princess to keep this short, but there is no doubt that she could actually get him expelled. In that case, he had no choice but to do something. His demeanor instantly shifts as he coldly affirms that the sun is about to set. He asks if a member of the imperial family should not be accompanied by an armed knight wherever they go. He reminds her that the noble princess is venturing into this desolate forest all by herself. Pinia instantly becomes alert and activates her powers, saying that he will surely regret it if he means to harass her. However, Ed instantly kneels to the ground and smiles, saying that he is, in fact, incredibly grateful to her. Pinia becomes suspicious and instantly activates her insightful eyes. She is instantly flabbergasted as she finds no deceit in his words. Ed smirks. After all, he is not lying. House Rothsteller, the family Ed used to be part of, is a notoriously powerful noble family. But they abused their power to exploit people and even carried out human experiments in search of immortality, leading to their eradication at the hands of the protagonist. The members of House Rothsteller all end up executed or put in jail, but Ed has been disowned. Suddenly, the game portal pops up, revealing that he has unlocked an inedible burnt fish. But he guesses it is much better than ending up dead. All he needs to do is persuade the princess without deceit, otherwise he will be expelled and it will be game over for him. Judging by the timeline of events, if Ed Rothsteller was disowned a few days ago, it is now a week before the semester begins. So why would the princess be here right now? He loudly guesses that she must be in the middle of the class assignment examination if she is here by herself in such simple attire and without her guard. Professor Glast's class assignment examination is a test in which students must search for the magic marbles hidden throughout the forest. He admits that the professor's exam is notoriously difficult, but she, the honorable princess, would of course be aiming for Class A, reserved only for the top students. Peenia tells him to stop, saying that he has not changed at all and is still trying to flatter her. But she is interrupted as Ed says that she will never be able to join Class A without his help. He tells her to have him expelled if she discovers his words to be untrue. She then softly reveals that in the middle of the lake to the southeast of the forest, there is a small island covered in grass. In the middle of this island is a large tree called the Guardian Tree of Merelda. There she will find his gift. Peenia becomes surprised as she sees the magic marble there. Just 3 days ago, she found Ed Rothsteller to be a lying cheater. She still remembers that disgraceful look on his face. But the Ed Rothsteller she just met was totally different, which made her feel confused. The scene shifts to Professor Glast, who coldly announces that the class assignment examination is now over. He orders the students to show him the marbles they have found. Professor Glast is the professor of the magic department. He looks at some dumb-looking students and places them in Class F. The key to the exam is knowing the examiner's intention. This test is not just about finding a magic marble. He shows the students gold-colored marbles, saying that those who found these marbles with low amounts of mana will be in Class A. He says that only 3 people managed this. Ziggs, Lortel, and the third student were able to find the marble hidden by the Guardian Tree of Merelda, which exudes incredible amounts of mana. In the meantime, Ed was trying his best to craft a shabby fishing rod. The third princess of the empire, Princess Peenia, grew up having to discern the truth behind endless flattery and deception in the court and earned her insight accordingly. And so nothing gets past her ability and insightful eyes, which she cultivated herself. This is why Ed could not help but give her actual information. But this is where things get tricky. The reason the prideful Princess Peenia is later given the nickname the Princess of Benevolence is because of the crushing defeat she experiences during the class assignment examination in which she is assigned to Class F and is deeply humbled. But if Peenia, who greatly influences the first half of the game, discovers the golden marble and is assigned to Class A, this part of the original plot is ruined. Ed might avoid getting expelled, but that would mean all of his knowledge of the game would become useless. In other words, he would be screwed. The third student in Class A, announced to be Lucy Mariel, will not change the future. Back then, Peenia could not believe that Ed Rothsteller had spoken the truth. But the marble was no gift. The reason Princess hid her identity during the entrance exam to begin with was because she was embarrassed about the privilege she might attain if her free status were to be found out. She wanted to achieve things on her own merits, though she sensed that this was the answer as soon as she saw the marble. Peenia could never take that marble for herself. It is because she did not find it on her own. The title Princess of Benevolence, which she will earn in the future, will not be based on her stats or skills, but on the righteous decisions she makes. And what Ed did was to bait the princess. It would not have mattered whether or not he lied. The princess has the ability to discern any lies, and even if he were to have told the truth and trusted the princess to fail the exam anyway, she was confident that she would prove him wrong by getting into Class A on her own. But Ed did not lie, and she failed to be assigned to Class A, and so Penia found herself unable to do anything except to keep an eye on Ed Rothsteiler. On the other hand, Ed was happy to have finally gotten hold of a fish. The first day of the classes arrived. Ed had to get up at dawn and run the whole way from his forest shelter to get to school on time. The students are welcomed to face a new semester with an opening announcement. But Ed was mostly welcomed back by whispers celebrating his survival. But it was busy enjoying the spoils of war, which are reserved for the victor in the form of a decent meal, and he decides to take his time to enjoy it. His goal, after all, is to graduate. He has no ambitions whatsoever. Two girls continue to gossip about Ed with their third friend. He then began to leave for an Ophelis hall for desserts. However, one of the girls, the pink-haired one, finds it strange. She looks back at Ed, noticing that he is a completely different person. Just when you thought our poor protagonist's life couldn't end up in a worse state, you thought wrong. Imagine it being your first day of the semester and you get called to the dean's office, nearly expelled. Ed had not expected Penia to tell the dean about him. But judging by the way the picky old man was smiling, he guesses she did not say anything bad. In any case, that was a close call. He knows he needs to be careful not to stray from the game plot. There are life skills he trained for his survival and the basic magic training he needs to do as a magic department student. He knows the best weapon for both of these to work well together is the pour. If he is able to raise his life skills and craft well-made arrows, he should be able to imbue them with elemental and magic skills. It's not that he has any sort of elemental skills, they are outside of his expertise. Once while catching a rabbit, he comes across the top of the second-year class and a genius elementalist, Yennecar Palarover. He notices that he has been staring at her for a while when she speaks up, saying that he must be the interesting boy Merylda mentioned. Without a second to waste, she was right by her side and introduced herself excitedly. Apparently, she even knew his name. Yennecar explains that the forest is under the protection of the high-ranking spirit Merylda, who told her a lot about him. She yaps about how the forest spirit likes to meddle in the affairs of humans, and there is no way they wouldn't notice an unwelcome guest in their forest. As soon as Ed hears the words unwelcome guest, he stares at the rabbit he just killed. He realizes unwelcome guest. He has indeed killed a lot of animals and cut down quite a few trees. But Yennecar tells him not to worry about it, as creatures hunting and eating each other is part of the circle of life, because the tree spirit is not bothered by that at all. Ed scratches his head, flustered, and looks away. Yennecar laughs and shows him a spirit in her hands, revealing she made a contract with it yesterday as soon as they met. Ed sighs and says he doesn't see spirits. He then turns to leave. Ed knows he could have played along if he wanted to get close to her, but the original game plot needs to be preserved in order for his knowledge to stay useful. This means that Yennecar, who plays a big role in the game, is someone he definitely needs to avoid. As soon as Ed leaves, Yennecar's expression instantly shifts. She tells Merylda that it was right and Ed is indeed an interesting person. She plops onto the spirit, complaining about how Ed was being indifferent despite her kindness. She guesses she will see him again and get time to know him. The distance between Ed's shelter and where classes are held is pretty significant. He has to head out at dawn and run to make it to class on time. In other words, he is getting such a workout every day that simply going to school and back is raising his stats. Plus, in order to earn a scholarship, he needs to study hard. He uses a wooden poker and a stone slab to take notes and borrows all the textbooks from the student library. On his way back, he stops by the stream to wash his sweat-stained uniform. You would expect that to be the last thing on his to-do list for the day, but it is not even close. Next, he needs to check whether he has enough firewood, drinking water, and jerky to have for lunch tomorrow. Once that is done, Ed can get around 4 hours of sleep, but more importantly, he was constantly being followed around by Yennecar. Yennecar was shocked that the boy knew. He argues that she was being really obvious. Ed was pissed and reminded her that he is the horrible good-for-nothing Ed Rothsteiler. He questions why she keeps hovering around him. Yennecar smiles, saying that's just what other people say, she doesn't know him well enough yet. Ed had expected Yennecar to be like this. On the outside, she seems naive and a little dense, but she has very strong beliefs. However, since he knows what will happen to this girl in the future, he finds himself unable to just smile and nod. After all, Yennecar Palarover is the final boss of Act 1. She is the only character who smiles at Ed Rothstaler. Ed didn't want to go this far, but he knows he must do it. And so, he asks her to lend him some money, as he is getting disowned and is pretty much broke. Yennecar, who was initially excited, was now dumbfounded. Yennecar is a top student who earns a full scholarship each year. But that is not just because she is such an excellent student. If she did not get the scholarship, she would not have ever been able to enter this school and keep studying here. Yennecar, she is the daughter of a poor farmer, and her weakness is money. And so now her confidence was shattered, and she crumbles internally as she apologetically says she cannot help. 3 days passed by. Ed was feeling a bit bad, but this way he knows he will not get involved with the main characters. After all, he needs to be careful not to stray from the game plot, but as he makes his way to his shabby shelter, he is shocked. He knows there is a character in the plot whose storyline is much more significant than Yennecar's. She is the genius praised by both her classmates and all the professors. She is the strongest character in the game, Lucy Mariel. But why on earth was she sleeping in her, and why would she ever come to this faraway spot? Lucy wakes up, mumbling that it is too noisy for her to sleep. At first, Ed thinks that she's referring to him, but Lucy points behind him, saying that there is a huge wolf behind him. Who keeps talking to him? Ed's eyes widen, and he instantly becomes alert. As he looks behind at the Merelda, Lucy translates its words, saying that it is telling him to save Yennecar in the future. Ed looks at Lucy in a dazed way because he cannot see anything. He thought he had finally managed to get Yennecar off his back, but this is getting worse and worse. Why on earth was Lucy sleeping in his shelter? To make things worse, she was going back to sleep. He is about to tell her off, but he pauses as he realizes something. Thanks to her small stature and her ability to walk on air, Lucy is able to go pretty much anywhere, much like a stray cat. Whether it be the top of a clock tower or a rooftop somewhere, as long as it is a nice place to nap, she will go anywhere. That being said, Ed's campsite is in the northern forest of Akin Island, and nobody comes this far. But it is not that far for Lucy. The breeze is cool, and with the sound of the stream nearby, it is the perfect place to skip class and nap. And so, Ed knows he only has himself to blame for his current predicament. The next day arrived, and Lucy was still sleeping in his shelter. He knows he needs to do something, as she kept casting several high-level magic spells, at once while flying here half asleep. If this absolute beast stays here, it is only a matter of time before the main plot starts to twist out of shape. Ed makes a snare trap using his crafting skill. Lucy watches him and asks if she can have a jerky. But to his utter annoyance, she ends up eating it and says that it is interesting. It is clear that she does not listen to him, and the fact that she has been here a couple of times means that she could keep coming. Ed knows he needs to think of something quick. He read through so many game guides, but every one of them said there was no way to defeat Lucy. However, he suddenly remembered something. He reveals to Lucy that on his way here he came across some maids from Ophelie's hall who were looking for her. The color from Lucy's face instantly drains, and then she immediately drops her jerky. She then hastily begins to pack up her things, saying that she remembered something urgent. With that, she departs. Ed is aware that though there is no way to win against Lucy, he remembered something about her in the character information guide that everyone skips. Every day, the dormitory maids who take care of Lucy chase after her, and she runs away from them. And so, Ed has managed to keep Lucy Mariel away after she hung out at his camp for 2 days. He is certain this will not affect the storyline, but it did not take long for Ed to realize just how complacent he was being. The Academy's next quest was joint combat training. The joint combat training is literally that in the form of one-on-one mock battles. In order to minimize any injuries, the combat department students all have to use practice weapons, and the magic department students are only allowed to use basic elemental magic. In the meanwhile, students of the alchemy department are forbidden from using any potions or spiritual skills that are too powerful. The gist of it is that everyone engages in a one-on-one battle against an opponent randomly decided by the bracket, regardless of the student's year or department. Notably, this training involves every one of the main characters who play a big role in the game story. They are Peenia, the princess of benevolence, Lortel, the golden daughter, Ziggs, the spear from nature, Yennecar, the elementalist, lazy Lucy, and creepy Clevius. There are too many of them to count, but the most important character is, of course, the protagonist. He is the failed sword master, Taeli. Ed beams with excitement as he waits for Taeli's entrance. He knows what will happen in the end, so he's not paying too much attention to the other fights. In the end, those who won all happen to be first-year students, just like Taeli, the main character. That is, except for one. He gets cut off from his thoughts as Yennecar cheerfully approaches him and hands him the bracket. He couldn't believe she is still trying to be friends after he asked her for money. If Lucy is like a cat, then Yennecar is much more like a puppy. Ed turns away from her, saying he does not care. Yennecar asks if he really does not want to know who he is up against. Hearing this, Ed's demeanor instantly shifts to that of panic and anxiety. He had forgotten that he has to fight too as the academy student. At this point in the original story, Ed Rothsteller had already been expelled, so he has no idea who he will be fighting. Just when you thought things couldn't get worse, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he saw his pairing with Princess Peenia. Just then, it is announced that the students should wrap up their preparations and proceed to the waiting room. Ed instantly forgets his own worries and springs up with excitement as the announcer calls out Lucy and Taeli's names. Taeli approaches the stage determined to do his very best. Ed smiles at him like a fangirl, knowing he needs to focus on the main character, as at this point it does not matter who he has to fight. It might have been a world inside of his computer screen, but he did go through several playthroughs as Taeli. And so he has seen everything from the dismal, heart-wrenching bad endings to the true good ending, which left a strong impression on him. He went through this game so many times, and out of the countless routes, not a single one was easy or effortless. Technically, Ed already resolved to just look out for himself and his own future, but still, he is rooting for Taeli. However, things began to go downhill once more as the announcer kept on calling out for Lucy Mariel. This makes Ed wonder where on earth is she? He tries to wake her up, knowing that they will be in big trouble if this duel does not happen. This is the incident that inspires Taeli to pick up a sword. Lucy wakes up in a dazed manner and asks Ed for more jerky. Ed was instantly furious and yelled at her to go do her duel first. And so the fight was between the top first-year student Lucy Mariel and Taeli McClora, the protagonist of this world, born to become a swordmaster. Though he never held a sword in his life, he manages to cut through Lucy's lightning-fast magic. When the spell she was sure would hit gets blocked, Lucy is taken by surprise. And taking his opportunity, Taeli closes that distance. Then Lucy is so shocked that she accidentally casts Lightning Strike, an intermediate-level lightning spell. Taeli is completely defeated by Lucy's reflexive magic attack, but since she used an intermediate spell, she is disqualified. And so, Taeli is given the honor of being the first person to ever win against Lucy Mariel. Ed lives through the scene in his head, thinking of how good it was, and now he gets to see it in person of all things. He stares at the stage as the fight commences, but to everyone's shock, as soon as Taeli tries to plunge on Lucy with all his might, she casually uses her lightning spell to throw him away. Whispers began to start as students wondered if the fight was already over. Taeli's life has always been a series of hardships. He was known as a failed student from the countryside, someone who has never been able to get decent grades, and a straggler who has never been praised by anyone. In this moment when everyone pities him, thinking he has already lost, even in this desperate situation, Taeli never loses hope. He springs up once again, making Ed smile. He knows this is the moment that the sword master, who never gave up, captures the hearts of all the students with his outcry. As the main character rushes towards Lucy with his sword, Ed knows this is the part where Lucy casts that lightning spell. But to his utter shock, he sees Lucy casually using wind magic instead of lightning magic, causing Taeli to fly backwards and crumble in one of the poles. With that, Lucy Mariel is announced as the winner and students' cheers ensue. However, Ed Rothsteller remains frozen in his tracks, unable to believe Taeli lost. He sees the characteristic spark in the protagonist's eyes was extinguished. An overwhelming difference in power levels can be like getting struck by lightning. Once you run up against that impassable wall, you can lose all hope in an instant. Ed knows leaving him alone right now is the worst option. He tries understanding what led Lucy to use wind magic. He is aware that Storm's Blessing uses a vent spirit power to automatically block surprise attacks. It is a passive magic spell you can gain when you make a contract with the high-level wind spirit Merylda. Lucy approaches Ed and asks if she can have some jerky now, but it ignores her and rushes past her to approach Taylor. He knows Merylda and Lucy were never supposed to cross paths in the original story. Lucy ended up making a contract with Merylda and getting stronger after staying at his camp. Soon, the announcer calls out the names of Ed Rothstaler and Princess Peenia. However, it ignores Peenia, rushing past her, thinking how Taylor should have won. He was supposed to take up the sword and get a confidence boost. But in the end, he lost because of him, because Ed Rothstaler was still at Sylvania Academy. He calls out Taylor's name. He doesn't know if this will do anything, but it is better than nothing. He shouts to him that his efforts will definitely come to fruition and that he should not beat himself up over this. If Taylor is discouraged, he falls into a pit of despair. There is a high chance Ed will end up having to go through hell instead, and so he tells the main character not to despair over something so trivial. After all, there are way too many ridiculous trials to get through at this academy. He wants Taylor to be the one to suffer through them, not him. It was Emperor Kroll who first realized that Princess Peenia had an inability to discern lies. He told her that she is given God's blessing at birth. But that ability was not God-given at all. Life at the palace was a continuous cycle of veiled amity and hidden schemes. She acquired this ability to discern lies in order to protect herself within this dark abyss. And so Princess Peenia had complete faith in her own ability. Among the gazes looking up at the princess in apparent respect at the palace was an unmistakable corrupt darkness. But even as she saw through all the lies, the noble princess of benevolence spent her life pretending not to notice. And because of this, she could not help but look this boy in the eye, Ed Rothstaler. He expresses that he is honored to face her in the battle, to which she shares the sentiment. On the other hand, the other students whispered about how he was yelling at Taylor earlier. They accuse him of trying to make it look like he is a nice person for cheering on someone he used to bully. They say it is an underhanded motive, and he has always been a terrible person. Their whispers cut through Peenia's mind, and she tries to realize herself that they are right. Ed Rothstaler is a shameful person who used his status to try and humiliate younger students. And when that did not work, he tried to meddle with their entrance exams and was caught red-handed. At least that was what he used to be like. But the Ed Rothstaler she recently met seems the exact opposite, making her wonder if that is really all there is to him. His desperation seemed evident when he followed Taylor earlier. On top of it, he was sincere. The commencement of the duel is announced. Princess Peenia calls Ed a distraction, saying that she would like to put an end to that with this duel. She's aware that he uses wind and fire magic, and so she uses a water attack, certain that he will not be able to block it. She plans to exchange blows with him until she can let go of her distracting thoughts. And by the time the intense battle is over, she should be able to see through his mysterious motives, or at least that was the plan. Ed soon goes crashing down, accepting defeat, but Peenia remains astonished as it wasn't that simple. She noticed Ed being able to identify where her water attack was headed and didn't block it. The crowd begins to boo him, saying this is even worse than Taylor's defeat. They laugh at him for acting all tough and going down in one blow. Ed stood up and bowed, thanking Peenia, saying that he learned a lot from this deal. But Peenia was confused. She realized that this whole time, ever since he stepped onto the stage, Ed has not met her eyes even once. The announcer calls out to the princess for being the winner. But Peenia was in her own thoughts as she came to a realization that Ed was not interested in fighting at all. Ed knows that whenever he runs into the princess, the key is to act in a way that will not affect the main story. It is because Princess Peenia is an incredibly important character in this game, but the one person who is even more important than her is the protagonist of this world, Taylor. And so he rushes to find her immediately after the fight. However, Princess Peenia catches up to him. In a fit of rage, she asks what is wrong with him, confusing Ed. With her face all red, she accuses him of never intending to fight her properly, and all he was thinking about was getting off that stage. She rambles on about how her workload for all of her classes is big enough already, But that merchant girl keeps trying to take over the academy with her money-making schemes. Plus, the staff here keeps harping on about imperial laws. So she questions, who is he to keep distracting her like this? Ed becomes stunned, as he did not expect her life to be so complicated. He grabs hold of her and softly tells her to calm down and take a deep breath. After some time, Pina becomes embarrassed and tells him to forget what just happened. Ed takes this cue to leave, but Pina keeps on yapping about her problems, making his ears bleed. All the poor guy wanted was to find his celebrity crush. Pina instantly activates her insightful eyes, saying that she will not beat around the bush anymore. She points out that he was trying to get disowned by his family because he knows something about the dark side of House Rothstaler. She says that he bullied Taylor because he needed a good reason to get disowned. Ed instantly becomes quiet. He knew that was a pretty sharp induction. Do half of it is wrong, but it is true that there is a dark side to House Rothstaler. However, he acts dumb, saying he does not know anything about that. After all, that is something she needs to find out by investigating it herself in the distant future. Pina becomes more furious, saying that his behavior then makes no sense. She questions why he was trying to be kind to Taylor then. Ed internally admits that those are very good questions, but sorry Pina, no dice. He confesses that he wanted to make fun of him. He keeps on lying and rumbling that everyone hates him, so he thought if he tries to cheer him on, maybe everyone might see him differently. However, Pina yells that he is clearly lying, as he is not even looking at her in the eyes. But he keeps on lying without looking in her eyes because he knows she has activated her insightful eyes. His constant lies annoyed Pina even more, but she could do nothing but yell at him. The only advantage Ed has in this world is that he knows the story, so he must not change things. She finally lets him leave, saying she has no proof, so she cannot refute him. She points to the door, saying that he must be in a hurry considering he is constantly staring at it. Ed thanks her and turns to leave. But it is odd considering he has never seen Princess Pina act like this. Considering how much influence she has on the first half of the game and how many characters and incidents she is involved in, Ed guesses having him added to the equation was the straw that broke the camel's back. There is not much he can do for her, but before leaving, he tells her that she seems exhausted. He admits that paying attention to complicated political matters and imperial concerns is, of course, important, but she should try to take it easy. This is not the Imperial Code where she must constantly be on her toes, it is Sylvania Academy. Pina's eyes widen as she hears his words. Like I told you guys earlier, Pina spent her whole life constantly seeing through people's lies. But this was the first time someone saw through her facade. Ed rushes to find Taylor before he ends up giving up. As a result, both Ed's leisurely life and even this world might be over. He finally manages to find the boy. But it is then that Ed wonders what should he tell him. However, in that moment, the main female lead, Isla Triss, blocks Ed's way, shielding Taylor. With tears in her eyes, she tells Ed to stop bullying him already. Taylor instantly steps forth and shields Isla. He coldly remarks that Ed Rothstaler is still here. Ed is surprised to see Taylor's fighting spirit recover. He could see that unbending willpower in his eyes. Now Ed finally gets it. While he was dueling the princess, Taylor's childhood friend and biggest supporter, Isla Triss, must have gotten after him without hesitation. She has managed to motivate him and told him not to give up. As long as he has Isla, Taylor will get back on his feet as many times as necessary. And so now both were suspiciously looking at Ed's questioning. What does he want now? Ed gulps and praises his sword fighting earlier. Having played through this game as Taylor countless times, the protagonist has been at his side through all kinds of hardships. When Taylor asks what he is playing at, it turns away, saying nothing. He knows he should be more honest with himself. He thought he could just leave saving the world up to Taylor and focus on his own survival. He did take Taylor for granted, considering he was this game's protagonist who will have to go through all that hellish misery. But just now he was relieved. It's not because the things that changed from the original story went back into place, but because Taylor, the person he spends so much time with, was doing well. That was enough for him. But it seemed Taylor and Isla did not share his sentiment, and they were disgusted by his nonchalant act. But Ed guesses he cannot blame them for reacting like that, though. As he turns away, he sees fire energy shooting in the sky. But he remains calm, wondering if it is that time already. This is a scene they should have been witnessing from the audience seats in Neil Hall, where everyone else was. It is the duel between Lortel, the Golden Daughter, and Yennecar, the Elementalist. It might be a little different from the way things were supposed to happen, but he is sure Taeli and Isla are watching as well. He hopes Taeli takes a good look at it, as that is one of the many hardships he will have to overcome. It is because the final boss of the first act is Yennecar Palarover. After the fights, everyone gathered around Yennecar, congratulating her for being the only second year who beat her first year this time. But Yennecar's eyes drift towards the first year that was being taken away after being injured. Her face immediately turns pale. With Taeli losing to Lucy, contrary to the original story, the center of attention of the joint combat training ended up becoming Yennecar Palarover for upholding the pride of the older students. Yennecar had many friends to begin with, but it looks like she will be surrounded by even more people as a result of this. Who knows, maybe that is for the best, as Ed will not be seeing her at his camp anytime soon. He knows getting involved in the storylines of the main characters complicates everything. 2 weeks have passed since the joint combat training. Without the interference of the main characters, Ed has been able to focus solely on his studies and his survival. Plus, he has been able to get enough food with the fishing net he crafted. He feels like he has gained some muscles from raising his strength stat too, but the standard for high stats is raising them to 10, and he cannot get complacent now. As he finishes washing himself in the lake, he bumps into a flustered Yennecar. Ed questions why would she even come here. She responds that places like this are like secret hideouts, so she feels like she's on an adventure when she comes here. She also reveals that she wanted to talk to him some more and get some advice. Ed's ears perk up at this. She confesses that during the joint combat training last month, she injured someone. Ed knew from the original storyline that it had because her opponent used intermediate-level magic first, and that was against the rules. But he guesses that would not matter to this girl, who is kind-hearted by nature. Yennecar dejectedly says that no matter how hard she tries to get over it, she keeps wondering whether she went too far, and so she questions him if she overreacted and whether she should apologize to her. She reveals that her friends stop her, saying that the first-year student did something wrong first. Ed tells her to do what she thinks is the right thing to do. Ed is available, but the lovely and cheerful Yennecar is triggered by every second-year student, so if ever she starts feeling guilty. The plane herself. Everyone chimes in to console her and take her side. But Yennecar knows that while it is nice of her friends to take her side, it does not absolve her of any blame that she ought to take responsibility for. That is probably why she came to talk to him. She smiled, saying that she knew he was different as he never took her side without question. She knows he was not like this last year. Even when he asked her for money earlier, he did not seem as desperate as someone truly at the end of their rope. This boy has clearly been trying to put some distance between them, and she has noticed it. But watching him act like that was a relief. She smiles, wishing everyone was more like him, giving her a strange sense of peace. The next day arrived, and Ed had already put himself in trouble. Sylvania's failed swordmaster may have been praised as a masterpiece, but very few players ever got to the true ending. Newbies in particular were faced with various bad endings at the very start. For example, if you save a girl getting attacked by goblins during the class assignment examination, you find out the Golden Daughter's secret. She didn't send someone to kidnap Taeli, which led to his assassination. And that is how it came over. And if instead of choosing his childhood friend Isla during the monster extermination training episode, you get paired up with the Golden Daughter, you reach another bad ending because Taeli is supposed to save Isla from falling off that cliff. And if you protect the Golden Daughter from Taken, the fire spirit summoned by Yennecar, Taeli ends up burning to death. But unfortunately for Ed Rothstaler, one of the 4 female leads of this game and the only child of the business mogul Elt Keheland had been following him constantly, Lordel Keheland. She grinned madly despite Ed confronting her, saying she wants to buy 2 hours of his time. P.S. She is also known as the newbie shredder. Unlike the other main female characters, Lortel's root is hidden. And unlike Vinia, she is treated as a villain from the beginning, whose true nature is revealed in the latter half of the game. As soon as you understand Lortel's pain and struggle as a realist, the player is forced to make a choice between Pinia and Lortel. But Ed cannot let that silver tongue win him over right now. If he follows along with Lordle's intentions, Ed will end up being controlled by her. And so he constantly tries to avoid her, despite her best efforts. She reveals that she is really moved by his strong will, and it is so impressive that he wishes to keep studying when faced with such a harsh environment. She shows him 3 gold coins and asks for his help to befriend Yennecar, considering he is quite close to her these days. Ed becomes confused. He stares at the gold coins, knowing that is the kind of money some hardworking people make in a whole month. She leans forward, questioning if someone as loaded as the Golden Daughter uses money to make connections. Lordle slips the 3 gold coins in his coat pocket, suggesting that he hold on to them for now, as she is well aware of the fact that the more people she has on her side, the better. Ed observes that this girl already has a hunch about what might happen in the future, that she will be getting into a political battle against Princess Peenia over the control of the Academy, and that she needs to start making alliances now. Ed smirks. Lordle remembers that those who grew up in abundance can grow weak-willed after just a moment of misfortune. And what is most effective against these people pushed to the edge is something as simple as a single coin. They sell their families for the sake of 1 gold and sell off their own pride and even themselves for that money. Taking over someone who is that desperate is therefore a concept that seems very simple and easy to the Golden Daughter. But unfortunately, it did not work on Ed Rothstaler. She smiles, finding him interesting. But unbeknownst to her, Ed regrets not taking that money. He knows if he had accepted it, he would be much better off. But if he were to put the newbie Shredder together with Yennecar, there is no telling what fresh new horrors might await him. He needs to avoid anything that could change the main story, after all. Later that night, Lordle did not appear insulted in the least by Ed's rejection. In fact, the business-minded girl who always considered gains and losses as well as pros and cons aided rejection and actually fulfilled her desire to get Yennecar Palarover on her side. And so, in the middle of the night, Lordle made her way to Yennecar and apologized for using intermediate magic, which was against the rule during the joint combat training. In reality, she wanted to see just how strong the top student of the second-year class was. Yennecar glances at her injuries, pointing out that they have not healed yet. Lordle feigns a smile, telling her not to worry as they will heal up soon enough. She thinks of the girl like a protagonist in a fairy tale and guesses she can influence her more easily if she plays on her guilt. But to her utter shock, Yennecar curtly smiles and remarks that her conversation with Ed must not have worked out. She says she was going to try and respect her privacy, but many of the spirits are very chatty. They tell her about pretty much anything that goes on near the forest in the north. Lordle becomes nervous. Yennecar coldly asserts that sincerity cannot be bought with money. She also says that what Ed did was much more touching. Her demeanor then instantly shifts back to that kind of girl from the fairy tale Lordle speaks of. She apologizes for sounding arrogant, saying that she might have gotten too conceited as she has never been someone's upperclassman. But Lordle takes a mental note to reevaluate her view of the girl. Yennecar excuses herself, saying she has a lot to prepare to make a contract with a high-ranking spirit. Yennecar Palarover, a fairy tale protagonist? God no, Lordle, you were wrong. She is someone who still keeps up a cheery attitude even though she knows of all the darkness in the worlds. Before leaving, Yennecar smiles at Lordle and apologizes for badly injuring her and says that they hope she gets better soon. Lordle groans, knowing the girl is quite difficult. Yennecar retires to her room, mumbling. The fact that everyone expects great things from her is a good thing after all. The next day, Ed was busy doing his laundry, but he becomes shocked to sense a presence. He gasped, saying he just hung everything up. He notices the appearance of a senior maid of Opheles Hall, the Academy's grandest dormitory, Belle Maya. Belle is the maid who kicked him out. She says she knew he was living here as Yennecar speaks of him, but she did not expect him to be living out here like this. She is glad to see that this change seems to have done him some good. It finds it hard to listen to what Belle is saying when his eyes keep being drawn to that. The maids of Opheles Hall are an elite group who perform every household task to perfection for the students, including cooking. He guesses the contents of Belle's basket have to be the finest ingredients in Elite, made like her, gathered personally from the forest. In other words, high-level foraging information that you cannot find in books. Ed recalls the episode that influenced Belle Maya's character. There is no scene in the game that directly involves her. This means that those extras can get acquainted without any issue. When he questioned her about the basket, the maid told him all about the various edible fruits, mushrooms, and herbs. And so he crafted a fishnet for fish farming. Now that he has more meat and fish, he is pretty set. He was now able to use fire and wind elemental magic level 10. Those are two pretty basic skills, but using them over and over again has allowed him to finally get to this level. He used those spells for cutting wood and cooking, so his survival skill efficiency has increased a lot, as evidenced by the fact that even though he is done with all his tasks, the sun has not set yet. Believe it or not, it has started to enjoy this lifestyle until just now. He goes flying backwards as something from the sky crashes to the ground. He begins to cough, still dumbfounded by what had happened. He remains frozen in his tracks as he sees his precious shelter has been destroyed. It was Lucy that had fallen to the ground as she mumbles about how she almost died. Ed was shocked to hear that the world's strongest mage almost died. Lucy was shuddering and called out Belle's name. That confused Ed. Belle was supposed to be one of the good ones. Then again, everyone is good until they start throwing punches in your direction. Lucy reveals that all she did was skip class like she usually does, but Belle Maya got really prissy and started walking toward her, who had her fist clenched tighter than usual. She says she does not know who, but Belle seems to be worried about someone. She says it was so sudden that she escaped with teleportation magic before she knew it. Still unaware of Ed's increasing rage, Lucy asks him for jerky. Ed had enough of her and punched her in the head, accusing her of blowing away his shelter. To his surprise, her magic barrier had not activated. Lucy says she has completely run out of mana. For once, karma seemed to be on his side. Lucy said she was out of mana. To Ed, that was the best thing he'd heard all week, like hearing your noisy neighbor finally moved out. He started flicking her forehead repeatedly, each flick fueled by the pain of a man whose rent and roof had literally blown away. Ed Rothstaler knows he needs a sturdier house. And for that, he needs to build something out of proper lumber. He went to the library because when life collapses, knowledge is cheaper than therapy. As someone who has to use every moment of their day wisely, it is best for him to get all the information he needs from the library in one go. He ends up finding the architectural design and the material he needs. Next, he needs to find out how to prepare the lumber and how to finish up a roof. But his attention diverts as a first-year magic department student, Elka, approaches him, revealing that it is time to close up the library. She comments that he is studying really hard. She says that seeing someone as focused on studying as him really inspires her to study harder. That's when Ed realized people really will romanticize anything, even a man too broke to afford walls. Ed stares at her. She looks like she really wants him to introduce himself too. As he reveals his name as Ed Rothstaler, the color drains from Elka's face. But Ed is used to this reaction, and he sees his bad reputation shows no sign of fading. He guesses he was too busy to do anything about it anyway. But to his surprise, Elka comments that he is very different from the rumors. She points out that he read through those elemental magic books she finds hard to understand in a matter of days, and he managed to read through 6 dense books. Just today she heard he was a braggart who does not actually know anything. She smiles brightly, saying rumors really are unreliable. She says she knows someone who works as hard as him and promises to root for him. She then waves him goodbye, telling him to get back to the tomb so she can wrap things up. However, she gets interrupted as suddenly the whole library starts to shake haphazardly. In the moment, one of the shelves begins to fall down towards Elka. This marks the beginning of the final chapter of Act 1, the fight against Glaskin, thanks to Taylor, the protagonist. Quite a few students were able to make it to the temporary post in front of the student halls. 2 hours have passed since this unforeseeable disaster occurred. Isla stares at the magic circle, saying that she read about it in a book about spirit summoning. And so the magic circle is meant to summon the highest-ranking spirit of darkness, Glaskin. Princess Peenia knew this was bad news. There is only one person with high enough spirit sense to have the ability to summon such a powerful spirit. She says it is very likely that their enemy is the second-year top student whose power went out of control due to the spirit of darkness, Yenikar Palarover. Everyone turned quiet. But the silence is broken by none other than Taylor, who asserts that there is no time to waste. Once glass can be summoned, there will be many more casualties, and so they need to get inside the student halls. The Imperial Guard Captain Claire says that those outside of the barrier will notice soon. He says the matter will be resolved within the premises of the Imperial Guards and the professors get involved. One of the alchemy department students says that if a high-ranking spirit of darkness made it, that barrier is very strong, and they need to take care of things from the inside. If everyone here works together, they can't take on a high-ranking spirit, but Creepy Clevius says he is against it. He asked if she really wants them to get past those mid-ranging spirits and spirit animals before infiltrating the building and taking down Yennecar. He begins to panic, saying that is suicide. Lortel questions if they are sure it is Yennecar's doing. Isla says most of it is probably Velosper's power and Yennecar must be nothing more than a medium. She affirms that dark spirits are the natural enemy of elementalists. They are incredibly strong, which is why elementalists cannot control them. They are like demons that seek to control elementalists, which is why elementalists must keep their hearts pure because they will be consumed otherwise. The question is that it is hard to tell how Velosper took over Yennecar, who is better than anyone at spirit summoning magic. Ziggs speaks up, saying the important thing right now is to decide what to do. Should they wait until the professors get here in the morning, or will they act themselves? He says the only one who can make this decision is Princess Peenia. Hearing this, everyone turns towards the princess, awaiting her decision. In that moment, she suddenly thought of what that boy had told her in passing. He had said that whatever burdens he carries cannot be any heavier than the enormous weight she must be carrying. After a while, she speaks of declaring that they will enter the building in 1 hour. However, only she, her knight Claire, the top students from each year, and those from Class A will go. It will be only those who have proven their capability. She tells everyone to get ready to move out and promises to take full responsibility for what happens. Soon, one of the students approaches her, reporting that they have determined the number of students left in the teaching halls. He discloses that both Audrey Hall and the Magic Potion Depository are under siege, and so they cannot count on them to join them. The princess sighed, saying they really are the only ones able to act right now. The boy begins to speak of how they do not know of any other students, but one of the girls interjects, saying that she does. She reveals that she came here from the library and knows that her apprentice librarian friend and a second-year student are still in the library. When she reveals her friend's name as Elka, Ziggs begins to panic. He curses at fate and says that he has to go and rescue her at once, as Elka has no way of defending herself. But Lortel and Princess Peenia tell him to calm down. They remind him that he is the strongest one out of all of them here, and they cannot let him go anywhere for the sake of their plan. They suggest he trust the second-year student with her in the student library. Ziggs asked who that second-year student was. Ziggs was so worried that he grabs her by her collar, telling her to spit out the name. The girl hesitatingly reveals that it is none other than Ed Rothsteiler. She begins to cry apologetically, saying that douchebag refused to leave the library even after it got dark. She was so irritated that she left Elka to deal with him. Everyone immediately turns silent as they wonder what to do now. The moment Ziggs heard Ed's name, the poor guy nearly short-circuited. It was nice to know Ed's reputation could still ruin lives at a distance. Princess Peenia suggests that they trust him anywhere. It's old enough to hear an explosion in the library, which makes her take her words back. Everyone freezes in their place while Ziggs silently tells them to shut up and flies away. He vows to turn Ed Rothstiller into mincemeat if he dares touch a single hair on Elka. The proverb, "a dragon rises from a small stream," is not enough to describe Ziggs, the spear from nature, and his miraculous story. The northern grasslands of the Empire were known to be barbaric, and where the Emperor's rule hardly has any effect, it is a world in which you must always watch your back, lest you meet your death. Ziggs was descended from the nomads who wandered through those lands. By the time he was old enough to fend for himself, he was already alone. Knowing when or why he had been abandoned, or whether he could ever go back to living in a community. Before he learned to read, he learned how to kill a deer. Before he grasped how to buy things from a shop, he had figured out how to get what he needed from animal corpses on the wayside. In other words, his life was that of a wild beast. Then came Elka Islin, the girl who looked at a feral boy covered in deer blood and thought, yep, potential boyfriend material. He was greeted by that innocent and cheerful face, which did not judge him by his looks. Instead, she smiled, saying that he looked like a wolf walking on two legs. Hearing those words, Ziggs lets go of the antlers of the animal he had just hunted. It is because at this moment, his eyes teared up as he realized that his life has been so lonely. That was the day he met the person he wanted to spend the rest of his life with, finally realizing what loneliness feels like. Elka and Elka's father welcomed him into their family. As he began to adjust to this fast-paced, civilized life, his time in the wilderness quickly faded into the distant past. With that, he turned from a young wolf into a human. But in order to protect Elka, he won't hesitate to become a beast at all. Damn, Ziggs, we didn't know about your main character energy. Ziggs has heard rumors about the scumbag named Rotstiller. He tried to tamper with someone's entrance exam, insulted the princess, and harassed a younger student. Ziggs fastens his paces and finally comes face to face with a rather injured Ed Rothsteiler. Ed was surprised to see him. Ziggs grabs him harshly and asks where Elka is, but Ed questions what he is doing here. Ziggs repeats his question louder. As soon as Ed reveals she is in reading room 3, Ziggs abandons him and goes looking for the love of his life. Humans obviously don't matter unless it is Elka Island. Ziggs bursts into room 3 and is met with a sleeping figure of Elka. She was peacefully asleep, making him sigh in relief. He looks around and sees heavy bookshelves around Elka. He knew they were too heavy even for an adult man to move, but they were placed around Elka as if to protect her. Plus, the blackout curtains are shut to avoid notice from the berserking spirits. Ziggs also notices the writing, which says to stay calm and not leave this room once she wakes. It also said that everything will be over before dawn and that she should block the exit and avoid provoking the spirits, and that she should think of her safety first and not do anything right. Ziggs deduces that someone made sure Elka was safe. He walks forward and sees a blood-stained uniform covering Elka. He knew this was not her blood, and the traces were going out of the library. He knew it was the blood of someone who was injured himself but wrecked his body further to protect Elka, Ed Rothsteiler. But why? On the other hand, Ed sighs, thinking what a waste. About 3 hours ago, when the library had shaken and the shelves were falling down on Elka, Ed had shielded her from the impact. He changed his luck as he had been training his body to get stronger. Judging by the summoning circle, the Glaskin subjugation arc must have started. He pulls the curtains, certain that the main character will take care of it. He has to avoid paying any attention to where all the important characters are gathered up. It is because he has to avoid changing the future, but still Ed knows time is precious and he cannot just waste it. Soon, numerous berserking, low-ranking spirits will cover the campus. He needs to block the door so they cannot come in here and take this opportunity to work on improving his shelter. He decides to just snack on the jerky he brought with him and spend the night researching. However, he suddenly freezes in his tracks as he realizes something. The reason Yennekar's ability is so special is because she has high proficiency in both spiritual understanding and spiritual resonance. These two statistics are raised by communing with spirits, but seeing spirits as an ability that needs to be unlocked first. Therefore, for someone like Ed Rothsteiler, who cannot even see them, raising his spiritual stats is near impossible. However, Yennekar just summoned countless spirits in physical form. In other words, this is a huge opportunity for him to gain experience. And so, Ed internally thanks Yennekar. And so while fighting the spirits, Ed's skills increased at an unbelievable rate. He has already raised Ignite to level 12 and his Spirit-type magic to level 7. If his spiritual resonance and spiritual understanding skills reach over 15 levels combined, he knows he can make a contract with his spirit. But he knows if he had gone beyond his limit, things would have gotten really risky. Ed gets cut off from his thoughts as Ziggs holds Elka. He questions what we were doing here. Ed says he was training. Ziggs says he finally understands what kind of a person he has and that he was like this from the start. To Ed's utter shock, Ziggs then posts, saying that he owes him a great debt. He promises to repay it as soon as he gets the chance. Ed then remembers that Ziggs and Elka are together. She is so important to his character that she is a named side character in the character information guide, which he completely forgot in the moment. But Ziggs' role is to be Taylor's friend who sticks to his side until the very end. He is a very important character. Ed asks Zig if he has left everyone behind at the student halls to come here. He then tells him to go back and do his job now that he has ascertained Elka's safety. He tells him to go help Taylor. Ziggs becomes confused, saying that he does not know why he speaks so highly of him when he has never even talked to him. Ed explains that it is more about how useful that guy will be in this fight, especially because he is the only one who can get through the hard hide of the high-ranking fire spirit. Elemental Slash is Taylor's signature move, which he learns in Chapter 9 of Act 1. He has to learn it to get through this chapter, and so as long as the protagonist uses that attack, they win. Ziggs thanks him for the advice, but Ed tells him to hurry up while he rests here for a while. He sighs as he sees Zig leaving. He is certain that giving him this much advice should get the wheels rolling along, according to the story. But he then suddenly realizes one thing. Ziggs had earlier said that he has never even talked to Taylor. He couldn't understand why both of them are not friends yet. In the original game, at the end of the semester evaluation, Taylor loses pretty badly to Ziggs, but manages to obtain the Elemental Slash attack to cut through Ziggs's magic. Ziggs is impressed by Taylor's tenacity, and the two become friends. But the final chapter of Act 1 has begun a whole month before it was supposed to. And so the semester evaluation ending has not even happened yet, which means Ziggs is not friends with Taylor yet. And Taylor has not learned the Elemental Slash attack. In other words, there is not anyone among the attack unit who can do any damage at Taken. Ed just had not realized that yet, but the story as he knew it was already falling apart. In the meanwhile, Ziggs returns to the student's square and apologizes for being late. Peenia tells him it's fine, saying that she's sure there would have been defeat even with his aid. It was just like Ed had expected. The attack unit's first infiltration attempt had failed. The Imperial soldier Claire suggests they recruit more volunteers if they plan on trying again. He promises to join once the pain in his leg wears off, but Peenia tells him to rest as he can hardly walk. Thankfully, they manage to retreat in time, but Claire is down and Clevius, the top first-year student of the combat department, has also been injured. Peenia wonders what they should do. In the end, she suggests they try their best with those who are left to take down the evil spirit. However, she gets interrupted by the surprise entrance of none other than Ed Rothstaler. He firmly says that they do not have time for all of them to focus on taking down Taken. He says it will not take long for it to be completed, judging by the progression of the summoning circle. This is the last thing I'd wanted to do, but he has no choice. He has to get involved with this story. Stepping forward, he reveals that they will divide their forces into groups, and he will lead one of them. Clevius becomes enraged and asks if he thinks this is a joke, but Ziggs stops him, telling him to let Ed speak. It continues saying that they need to get past the fire spirit, Taken, summoned by Yennecar before they go against her, who has been taken over by the dark spirit, Velosper. He reminds them that Taken's hide is too strong for any of them to be able to damage. In other words, they should not waste time on defeating the fire spirit. He elaborates further that one group will distract the fire spirit while the other gets past to take down Yennecar in the training hall. Lortel immediately refuses. She says that this fire spirit is different from the one Yennecar summoned during the training duel, and they were only able to retreat safely by sheer luck. She says if the group distracting Taken fails or is eliminated, the fire spirit will go after the attacking group, which will mean that they will have to face both Taken and Velosper. Ed looks at her coldly and says she can only call something risky when she has a better option. He asserts that the most important objective is to take Yennecar. That way, Taken will be incapacitated as well. Ziggs comes forth, adding that the question is who will be the bait. Everyone turns silent. It is because no one has a death wish. Taylor instantly raises his hand to volunteer, but Ed shuts him up, saying that he needs to be part of the attack unit going into the training hall. Taylor tries to argue that he is fast, but Ed says he has got it all wrong. They're not picking out sacrificial lambs here. They do not have to divide their forces in half exactly. He then says Clevius, he and Lortel will be enough to lure Taken away. Clevius tries to argue, as he didn't want to die, but Ed respectfully tells him to shut the hell up. He tries to reason with him, but Clevius can't help but panic. Princess Peenia finally speaks up, saying that everything Ed said is correct. She says she still does not understand his motive, but she orders all of them in the name of the Empire to divide into two groups and listen to him. She says that she, Taylor, Ziggs, Isla, and Elvira will be in one group and go against Yennecar. Clevius, Lortel, and Ed Rothstyler will lure Taken away. She says they do not have much time, so she will make it quick. She tells them not to get themselves killed no matter what, and so they all rush to fight. Lortel, Clevius, and E stare at the fire spirit. Lortel asks Ed how he plans to buy everyone time against that fire lizard. It tells her to just do as he says, and as long as they stick to the plan, they will win for sure. He tells Clevius not to worry. Ed knew creepy. Clevius, he is cowardly and lacks confidence in his abilities, but he is the top student of the first-year combat department. He nods in encouragement, telling him that he will do just fine. But Clevius, I couldn't help but wonder why he is so confident. Does he have some sort of surefire plan? He remembers Ed saying that Yennecar is in the training hall behind those doors, so they just need to distract Taken. He ended up coming here because the princess's steadfast attitude won him over. However, at least he is not alone, which makes him smile. He thinks that maybe he can be brave this time, but that confidence probably did not last long as he began to fight the fire spirit. He looks back to ask how to lure the fire spirit away, but it was as if his worst nightmares had come true. No one was behind him. Literally no one except for Taken, of course. That was a weird way to reinforce his trauma. He yells about how he has been tricked and tries to flee. Lortel stands outside. She recalls how Ed had suggested they get out of here while Clevius charges down the Nail Hall corridor. Lortel sighs, asking if he was planning on sacrificing Clevius all along. She says it might work, but Ed will not be able to avoid people questioning the morality of this decision. Ed firmly said that he is not going to be sacrificed, as he is a top student and incredibly durable. He also points out that Lortel will be playing the most important role. He had said that she is in charge of forging a path for the other group to get to Yennecar, and she will be the one dealing the most damage to Taken. As Lortel carries out what he had said, she smirks. She loudly guesses that one really should not judge people by the rumors surrounding them, and so, in the end, she blows up the hall. The other group looked at her in astonishment. Lortel smiles. I'd signal to them that it is their time to shine now. As she thinks about it, she remembers that she has done this kind of thing before. She blew up the Nail Hall roof by using intermediate-level magic during the joint combat training, which was against the rules. She smiles, now realizing why Ed had left this task to her. In any case, she knows the others are now able to get through. While the second group makes their way inside to Yennecar, Lortel looks at a fleeing Clevius with Taken right behind him, playing hide and seek. Ed had told her that they are supposed to lure the fire spirit to the students' square. He had said that they cannot escape and need to defeat Taken. Lortel reminded him that no attacks were against the fire spirit because it's hard to hide. She reminds him of the joint combat training earlier when she lost against the fire spirit once already. Besides, none of them were able to harm it at all when they tried earlier. Ed smiled and showed her a sack. He says he can deal with that height with this somehow, and she just charges up her magic attacks and is ready at that time. Ed knew Lortel was right. Without the elemental slash attack, none of these characters are able to pierce through Taken's hard hide. What they need is overwhelming firepower, and so Ed comes to find none other than Lucy Mariel, and I suppose none of you will be shocked when I tell you that she was asleep as usual. Classic lazy Lucy. The final chapter is beginning to begin with, so very few game players have tried to clear all of the extra conditions. But our protagonist has done it countless times, and so he knew Lucy's whereabouts. But what about in the moment? In the moment was how she was still sleeping despite her being literally kidnapped. After destroying his shelter and losing her favorite place to nap, Lucy came to this roof, her previous napping spot. But really, she was napping through all of these events because she had to be kept away from the main storyline. Yennecar is unwell, which causes Belle Maya to be on edge. Therefore, Lucy uses up all her magic power while running away from Belle and falls asleep. There had to have been a way to make sure this overpowered character stays out of the final boss fight, but right now, they need her more than ever. Ed knew just the trick to wake her up. Jerky. As expected, Lucy immediately wakes up. Ed shoves all of the jerkies in her mouth, telling her to have her fill. Determined, he begins to estimate how far he has to throw her. He decides to trust himself, as he has done this kind of thing a lot during his military service. As he immediately threw, he warned everyone to get down. Lucy had no idea what was going on, and she cried against crying as she saw the fire spirit right in front. With the jerky still in her mouth, she calls Ed names in an incoherent language. But it was all worth it as Lucy immediately activates her fire magic. Ed knew this was a crucial moment. Taken is a high-ranking fire spirit whose thick hide made it impossible for anyone to defeat it. But after getting struck by Lucy's high-level magic, it's hard to hide, it is crumbling. In other words, their attacks will work now. Of course, taking out Taken will result in an enormous number of experience points for Ed. And so he decides he would be better off taking advantage of this now that he has come this far. And so, with all his might, he rushes to take the kill. The scene transitions to flashbacks from Yennekar's life. From a young age, Yenneker was loved by all those around her, her mother, her friends, they all talked about how proud they were of her. But that's the thing about high expectations. They age like milk under a heat lamp. Yenneker smiles as she sees her batchmates, knowing she should greet them with her usual smile. But she was trapped in chains, with every movement of hers controlled by a bigger entity. Meanwhile, Ed Rothstaler guesses from the intensifying mana that the fight against Yenneker just started in the Nail Hall. He knows this chapter is supposed to end before dawn according to the original game plot. Thankfully, he made it in time to aid Lortel and Clevius in fighting Taken. He questions where Lucy is, and Lortel reveals she is rolling around somewhere in the corner. Ed had hoped Lucy would have landed the finishing blow, but Lortel guesses she must not have enough magic left for that. Lortel says she has been trying to take care of the situation, but Taken is holding on even after she landed 2 ice spear attacks against it using a lot of her magic. Determined, Ed pulls up his sleeves, revealing that she needs to slash its neck. He says her ice magic is not suited for cutting things, so he decides to take care of this. Lortel becomes confused, pointing out that he's in the magic department just like her. She suggests he leave it to Clevius, who has a sword, but judging from Clevius's current state, they both knew that was not an option. Ed tells her to trust him and that she should slow down Taken for him. He reminds her to pay attention as he is putting his life in her hands. Lortel sighs deeply, commenting that Ed Rothstaler seems to have no trouble putting his life in other people's hands or telling people to trust him even though it is all just a gamble. Ed asserts it can't be called a gamble. Putting your life on the line isn't like betting money. He looks back at her, saying it is an investment. Lortel smirks, saying investing is her specialty. She states that she prefers him over that princess who gets pulled this way, and that despite pretending to be an imperial leader. She activates her magic with full vigor and determination, saying that since he decided to leave his life in her hands, she will leave hers to him. As the two charge towards the fire spirit, Clevius, ever the comic relief, called for a timeout mid-apocalypse. Despite the rampaging Taken, Ed knew he must get closer to it, but he got distracted as Clevius yelled, "What's that?" Ed ignored him, spotting Glaskin's right arm in the air, nothing like dismembered limbs to remind you the story's on schedule. He knew it meant Taily, and the others are up to their final attacks. This proves that the story is advancing as it should, but the timing is terrible. Anyone would be distracted by this sight. Despite the terrifying scene up above, Ed notices that Lortel didn't miss her chance, and the same goes for him. As soon as he spots an opening, Ed Rothstaler uses a magic attack that he has used thousands of times by now, Wind Slash. With surgical precision, Ed unleashed a Wind Slash that beheaded Taken. Thousands of hours of repetitive gameplay finally paid off. Somewhere, a game developer wept with joy. With that victory, all of a sudden game portal messages began to pop up. They revealed that Ed's spiritual resonance and understanding have increased. Along with that, he had unlocked a spirit contract and is now able to make contracts with spirits. Ed Rothstaler looks back at Glaskin's arm with, of course, Taily's figure reaching for it with immense power. It was just like the game. With swift motion, Taily slashes through the arm, defeating the enemy. The arm explodes, causing Taily to go flying back, but this just proves that Taily is the protagonist. They all stare at the bright red sky, knowing it is all over. By the time the sun rose, Lortel, Ed, Clevius, and Lucy all sat underneath a tree, reflecting on life, trauma, and why no one thought to bring snacks. Lortel commented on Ed's reckless habit of entrusting his life to others. Ed hummed, which is the universal male response for "I'm emotionally unavailable, but thanks for asking." She asks if that is all he has to say after they went through a life-threatening event together. She smiles and raises her hand, saying that she will properly introduce herself again. Ed shakes her hand, and to his surprise, Lortle hands him 3 gold coins. Lortle mentions that he has won this time. She cheekily points out that he owes her now and promises to see him again, but Ed really didn't want to get involved with her. Suddenly, Taylor comes running up to Ed, saying that he resents him and that he knows already why. Ed notices his hair color has changed, which means he must have awakened his swordmaster's skill. Ed finds it very cool, and it is just like in the game. Taylor bows and says he is in his debt and thanks him. But Clevius yells at Taylor not to bow down to this terrible person who will stab him in the back someday. He is about to reveal how Ed stabbed him in the back, but is interrupted by a grim-looking Ziggs who tells him to quiet down. Princess Peenia and Lortle also side with him, shutting up Clevius. Peenia ignores a whimpering Clevius and thanks Ed. But Ed reveals that it was Luke who did most of the damage against Taken, and Taylor was the one who defeated both Velasper and Glaskin. Thus, they deserve the praise. Elvira teases him for being embarrassed to acknowledge his role in this mission. But to her annoyance, Peenia and Ziggs shut her up as well. Ed Rothstaler couldn't help but smile. He has done his best to keep his distance from the main characters in order to avoid influencing the main storyline. But now that he is watching them up close, he cannot help but feel all fuzzy inside. It is because he has watched these characters go through their roles countless times and get past each of their own obstacles for the sake of this world. There is Taylor, who gets stronger with each ordeal he has to go through, and Isla, who gets stronger for Taylor's sake. Peenia, who matures with each incident to become the ruler she is fated to be, and Ziggs, who forges his own path within civilization. There is Clevius, who finds confidence in himself, and Elvira, who realizes that life is not just about fun and entertainment. And of course, there is Lortle, who begins to reflect on her way of life, which was dedicated solely to making more gold. They are all main characters in this story who play the roles they are given, and at the end of it all, success awaits them. Knowing this, Ed Rothstaler turned away. He knew he was never able to come back here at this point when he played the game, the stage after the end of the boss's fight. He looks at the spare platform where Lucy was napping during the joint combat training. He could not help but come here because he felt like something was missing. After all, in order to put the spotlight on the protagonists, someone had to stay backstage. And that role was, unfortunately, assigned to Yennecar Palarover. Yennecar smiles as she sees Ed, but it was that kind of smile people use when they're holding back a complete breakdown. Earlier, Ed had asked Lortle what it was that made Yennecar lose control. Lortle said she has a theory. She reveals how she caught a glimpse of Yennecar's room once. Every one of those items was a sign of sincere appreciation. But despite how large her desk was, there was no space for her to place even a book or two. The writing pinned to the wall weighed her down like massive boulders. It would have been easy to avoid this weight. All Yennecar had to do was take down the notes on the wall and put the gifts on her desk in a corner. But the root of her misery was the fact that she was like an innocent girl from a fairy tale who could never do such a thing. She tried obsessively to repay everyone's appreciation and meet their high expectations by doing her very best. And now it is obvious just how reckless that was. The darkness inside of her was enough for Velasper to take hold, and it was only a matter of time until Yennecar would succumb to it and lose control. However, why did all of this happen a month before it should have? That is what made Ed ponder. During the joint combat training, Taylor was supposed to be the one praised for his victory in the scene. But because Lucy took him out and won, everyone ended up becoming a fan of Yennecar instead. The reason Taylor lost so completely to Lucy was because she made contact with Merylda and was able to do so because she visited the northern forests so often. The reason for that, in turn, was because she had found a perfect spot to nap. And the person who had provided that spot happened to be Ed Rothstaler, who was supposed to have left the academy at the start of Act 1. Ed sighs as he looks at Yennecar, who is in a somewhat disheveled state. She kept smiling, saying she gets why Lucy was napping in here. It was nice and cozy. She says she didn't expect anyone to find her so easily, though. She says she feels a bit hurt, as it seemed like the others forgot about her amid all the chaos. She says she ran amok on such a grand stage, but now that it is over, no one cares anymore. She thought they might come and look for her at least a little. Ed says it is her own fault for hiding here, to which Yennecar laughs a bit. She hugs herself tightly, confessing she wanted to stay in there for a while. Upon asking, Yennecar smiles glumly, saying she wanted to bawl her eyes out. Her words remind Ed of what Lucy had said about Merylda wanting him to save Yennecar in the future. Now, the spirit wolf's request almost sounds like it wanted him to keep this from happening to Yennecar. But there is no way that can be the case. Isn't Ed Rothstaler the only one here who knows the future? Ed is sure the wolf just figured that the person who did not seem to care about Yennecar, while everyone else was fawning over her, might actually be someone she could lean on. In the end, Yennecar Palarover failed. She had been trying to make contact with another high-ranking spirit, but because she was too careless with her summoning, she ended up being consumed by a dark spirit and destroying the education district. She had studied day and night to improve her magic and had always met her family, fellow students, and teachers and their sincere encouragements with a smile. She had also tried her very best to meet their expectations when no one was looking. Each step of her journey was beautiful because of how much effort she had put in. And so, paradoxically, even her failure was beautiful. Ed is not sure how comforting his words will be, but he still tries. He smiles warmly at her, telling her that she did great. As the main characters walked out onto the stage, they were met with applause, but backstage, everything was quiet and dark. The protagonist's every move overshadowed what happened to the final boss of Act 1. Yennecar remains speechless as she hears its calming words, and as if something inside her broke apart, she begins to cry, finally breaking through. Ed has replayed Act 1 countless times in the game, but it was not until today that he felt like he got a proper ending for it. As Yennecar cries, all the spirits that she had made contact with begin to approach her. Ed looks at the beautiful view in amazement. Suddenly, the game portal pops up, revealing that his spiritual resonance and understanding had increased to a level 10. Plus, it seems that the wind and fire spirits are showing interest in him, along with the high-ranking wind spirit, Merylda. 10 days passed since Yennecar's disciplinary hearing. She pleaded guilty to everything and stated that she would accept any punishment they thought appropriate. However, even during the first round of the hearing, all of her friends and supervising professors stood up in her defense. In the second round, Princess Pinia declared that the palace would not be charging Yennecar. With an attempt against the life of a member of the imperial family, she testified that she had been mind-controlled by Velosper and had therefore not intended for any of this to happen. Lordle stepped in when it came to the costs incurred by the destruction of the campus buildings. The elite company covered the reconstruction free of charge in exchange, of course, for cutting in half the custom taxes charged by the academy for any school supplies sold there. In any case, as a result, Yennecar lost all financial support for being a top student, had to return all of her honorary rewards, and lost the right to live in Opheles Hall starting next semester, and was given 10 days of probation and 20 days of suspension. But she avoided expulsion from Sylvania Academy. It felt like the moving conclusion to a teen drama. Despite her friends being glad, they noticed that Yennecar still seemed down. The guests thought it must be because she has so much on her mind and decided that it was their turn to step in. They mutually agreed not to bring up the Glasskin incident no matter what and not to act like they feel sorry for her either. They planned to steer the conversation toward trivial gossip instead. However, before they could act on their plan, they became astonished as they saw Yennecar blushing as she asked them what the difference is between liking someone and loving someone. When they asked where it was coming from all of a sudden, she hesitatingly said that this was about a friend of hers. She has attended and reveals that the other day she dreamed about a loved one and how they were so happy together. She rambles that her friend keeps having such dreams, but her friends knew something was suspicious because she was on probation the past 10 days and wasn't able to see anyone. Thank you, friends. Do not explicitly point it out, but ask what else this friend told her. Yennecar becomes more flustered and reveals that she said that when she sits in her room and stares at the wall, his face keeps coming to mind. One of her friends fled away, saying that she forgot she promised to help the assistant professor with something. The other one knew she needed to approach this matter slowly and carefully so that Yennecar's sensitive heart would not indicate hurt in any way. If she is not careful, the whole academy will know about this in a heartbeat. Is Yennecar Palarover in love? That gossip train will be unstoppable. And so she tells her that maybe this is not as complicated as she thinks. She smiles, gently suggesting that being true to your feelings is probably best for her friend. Yennecar nods excitedly, saying that she is right. But Clara tells her to be careful about bringing up such delicate matters, as it might make both her and her friend look bad if they talk about it too much. Yennecar thanks to her for listening to her dilemma, saying that she should get back to Opheles Hall to write her suspension report. Clara waves her goodbye, saying that she will sit here for a moment as she has some things to think about. As soon as Yennecar disappears from sight, she slams her face on the table in relief. Damage control 101. In the past, Ed would have saved up every coin he had. But since he does not have to pay tuition next semester thanks to cleaning putting in a good word for him, he bought some tools with the gold coins he was given. And so, he was in a good mood. But on his way, he suddenly bumps into Yennecar, who was obviously fidgeting. He has been avoiding her for a while, but now that Act 1 is over and Yennecar is no longer the final boss, he thinks it isn't a big deal. He greets her and questions if her probation is over now. Yennecar gasps and jumps out of her wits, hiding behind a tree. She hesitatingly greets him but instantly rushes away, saying she has things to do back in Opheles Hall. Ed Rothstiller stood dumbfounded, but he doesn't worry about it as he needs to get busy. After all, it is finally time to build a cabin for himself. On day 1, Ed decided where to build his cabin. He picked out a wide open space with shade that was out of the way and started flattening the ground. On day 3, he began to gather lumber. This went very smoothly, seeing that he had trained his wind/slash attack so much. By day 6, it was time for the end-of-semester evaluations, so Ed paused his construction for a bit. He did pretty well on his written exams, and while his practical exam grades still needed work, Ed had improved greatly considering how bad his grades were at the start. For some reason, he has noticed that Yennecar keeps avoiding him. Her friends, Clara and Annis, keep giving him warning looks as if to tell him not to go anywhere near her. It's not like he intends to anyway. By day 18, Ed had almost gathered enough wood for the cabin. He began to wonder whether anyone had ever trained their wind/attack as much as he had. On day 20, their semester break began. And so Ed was now able to spend all day at his camp. When he went to check his snare trap, he found Lucy caught in it, sound asleep, because he decided to stop using Jerky as bait. On day 27, Belle Maya, a senior maid of Opheles Hall, came to visit and shared a few medicinal herbs and mushrooms with him. She also asked how things were going with him and Yennecar. So he told her he must have done something to make Yennecar upset. At this, Belle just tilted her head at him. On day 31 of the pillars Ed had set up, they fell over and the exterior wall went tumbling down. He realized that making the joints fit together was not enough to make the structure sturdy. He knew this sucked big time. He also ran into Yennecar and her friends by the bakery in the commercial district, but she ran away as soon as their eyes met, as usual. This made him question the peculiar situation even more. On day 37, Ziggs came by to help Ed with the construction. Ziggs reported to him how Taylor really is a good guy, just like Ed had told him earlier. Ed was glad things were finally moving along according to the original story. On day 45, Ed had finally completed the construction of the cabin, but he still does not have flooring and the walls are still drafty. The cabin he made was a crude structure made from nothing but wood logs. However, it has an exterior wall and a roof. If he closes the doors, he can keep the bugs out. Ed smiles in relief and satisfaction. He had crafted a new item, log cabin, and finally has a house. He closes his eyes to rest, unaware of Yennecar's presence in the distance. Her expression seemed like that of confidence and determination. Ed thinks that it will be nice once he finishes the flooring and walls, adds furniture and a fireplace, and builds a fence around the cabin. He thinks of making a small shed to keep his tools in and store firewood as well. He gets distracted from his thoughts all of a sudden as something lands on his roof. He goes out to see that it is none other than Lucy coming to take another nap. He reminds her that this is not a cat tower. His attention diverts towards Yennecar, who nervously waves at him. Earlier, Yennecar had talked to Belle Maya, who revealed she went to Ed's cabin. Belle leaned further, saying that she really wanted to go inside and look at it in detail to see just how sturdy it is. She kept on whispering that she is only a human after all, and anyone would love to take a closer look at the cabin in the woods if they saw it in passing and wondered who made it and how. She asserted that this is an extremely normal and natural response. This made Yennecar think and, of course, act on such a natural thing. She yapped open the exact same words to Ed. She then praised his cabin, saying that it looks amazing. Ed remains confused and asks if the spirits didn't tell her about it. Yennecar recalls what the spirits had said, praising his muscles, but she obviously couldn't tell that to him. And so she says she does not talk that much with the spirits to begin with. Ed suggests that she take a look inside. Yennecar smiles and agrees. She was stunned that he made all of it by himself. After they get the fire started and gather around it, Yennecar confesses that she did not expect the princess or Lordle to step in and help her so much. She reveals that some of her friends have offered to lend her money for the tuition as well and wonders how to repay everyone. Ed stares at her for a bit and tells her not to repay if she cannot. The idea that she has to repay every single favor is old-fashioned anyway. Yennecar she's stunned by his response, saying she never thought about it that way. Ed had expected this, as this is what she was like. The whole reason things went so far was because she was weighed down by everyone's well-intended expectations, but most people would not realize that. The reason? She made the decision to move from the Grand Opheles Hall to Dex Hall, the oldest dormitory on campus. Despite people offering to fund her education, was probably because she did not want to owe so much. But the students in Opheles Hall get their own rooms, while each room is shared by at least 8 students in Dex Hall. Having to deal with the admiring gazes of your friends all day long has to be like being chained down in prison. And so, in the end, the root of her problem has not been resolved at all. The vicious cycle has not been broken. Yennecar's eyes widen as Ed suggests she visit any time if she ever wants to be alone. She smiles, saying that makes her really happy. She also hopes for him to turn to her if he ever finds himself in need of help. Ed smiles, and the two sit in silence for a while. The second semester is about to begin, and so God knows they're probably getting close to the start of the second act of the game's show. The Sage's sealed tome has the records of celestial magic of Sylvania. Celestial magic is known as very complicated, high-level magic that can bend the natural laws of this world. This worn old book is at the center of the incident that sweeps across the whole academy, but it knows it will not matter. At least for him, however, Taylor will have to go through a lot soon, but he knows that it will definitely suck. And so, he internally wishes Taylor good luck. Act 2 of the game starts with the occupation of Opheles Hall. The students who qualify to live there are guaranteed a life of luxury. They are given the right to pick their seats before the other students, can have meals whenever they want, and are assigned personal maids. The privileges are in a league of their own, but this is where trouble breaks out. As the semester break came to a close and it was time for the students to return to campus, a torrential rainstorm swept over the southwestern region of Velar, where Akin Island is located. The academy provided carriages and boats for the returning students, even allowing them to arrive a few days late without repercussions. But this was limited to the students of Opheles Hall. The students of Dex Hall, who had to ford through the rain to get to campus and were anxious about arriving late and receiving demerits for it, were so angered by this incident that they finally snapped. Of course, all of this was planned by a certain merchant. The merchant made contact with Willing, the representative of the underachieving students, ahead of time. He was intent on exacting his revenge against the academy and Opheles Hall. The complaints against the academy were at an all-time high. As long as the underachieving students and the regular students are given enough of a reason to become enraged, Willing, skilled in instigating a mob and making speeches, would do the rest. The reason already existed. There was an extreme difference in treatment between the elite students and the regular students who had to walk through the rain to get to campus. There was a proposition that suggested that the elite students of Opheles Hall be given a grace period of several days to get to the academy. The head maid who governs Opheles Hall and several of the academy's administrators are already on Lordle's side. And so they will support her proposition without hesitation, that is for sure. At this point, it did not matter whether or not the academy would have agreed to the proposition to give the elite students these privileges. The fact that this was even on the table was enough for the regular students to be enraged. The incident had to be as big and noticeable as possible. Numerous works of art that belong to noble houses and powerful families are displayed in Ophelis Hall. The wallpaper, carpets, and hardwood furniture were all made by master craftsmen. The more property damaged, the better. The best outcome would be for Ophelis Hall to be mostly destroyed altogether. If the enraged students were to go all out, the academy, already in financial trouble because of the Glasgow incident, would become desperate. This would give the elite company a huge advantage in the negotiations currently ongoing over the sale of the Sage's Sealed Tome. The Sage's Sealed Tome is the magic book significant enough to be called the heart of the academy, but those at the end of the rope are willing to put something that important on the table. Lortle stared outside the window, wondering when the rain will stop. There was no sign of light among the dark clouds. It was just like the sky she had looked up at between the tattered roofs of the slums. She began to feel guilt for how complacent she had felt. There were too many sources of light in this campus of learning, brimming with hope and idealism. All it did was shine a light on just how much darkness had seeped into her while she had lived in it. The countless schemes strewn across her desk were proof of that. The traces of someone who never revealed their true thoughts and always sought to trick others and suspect them. She had changed in an effort to adapt and survive, but that did not change the darkness rooted inside of her. And so Lortle sought out others like herself, as if compelled by something. Even at Sylvania, which was filled with bright and hopeful individuals. It was possible that someone would approve of the efforts made by nasty sewer rat. As long as she leaned against this futile hope, her nature would never change. In order to survive this dismal reality, Lortle always used the same strategy. She was always the one covering up the grim truth behind the stage. There was a name for such a person, the mastermind. Regular students shouted in protest for equal treatment, especially when it comes to grades. In the original game, the occupation of Ophelis Hall has to be stopped by the protagonist, who has to stop the rioting students instigated by Lortle. Several mid-bosses aid the rioting students and get in the way of the protagonists throughout all 5 floors of the hall. The mid-boss of the first floor is Decoy Tot. Tot, who made fun of Taylor for failing his classes, was easily won over by Lortle after experiencing a humiliating defeat against Taylor and his friends. His role is to take care of the newbie maid who guards the first floor, open the doors to the hall, and allow the regular students to rush inside, thus standing in the way of the protagonist and his friends once the other students get inside. It is the role of Decoy Tot, the mid-boss of the first phase of Act 2. Well, technically this role was supposed to go to Tot, but now Tot has been replaced by Ed Rothstaler. Even he could not understand how he ended up becoming a mid-boss. To explain how he ended up here, we need to go back to what happened 2 days ago, when there was still time left before the incident at Ophelis Hall. Ed has been forcing himself to use a bow whenever he goes hunting. But it is at times like this he is reminded that he has very little talent when it comes to combat skills. Even after a whole semester and half of the break, his archery skills have not improved much. More importantly, these days various guests have been stopping by more regularly than before. It feels like more and more people are finding out that Ed lives in the northern forests in a cabin by himself. In any case, among his regular visitors, there are 3 noteworthy individuals. Guest number 1 is a genius mage who visits at random, Lucy Mariel. She keeps irritating Ed, who always has to shove her away. Surprisingly, Lucy was extremely excited that he had made the cabin by himself and kept questioning whether it would collapse or not. And so his guest number 1 is difficult to control. Ed actually welcomes guest number 2, Yennecar Palarover. She is at the top of the second-year class and quite a talented elementalist. After he told her she could visit whenever she wanted, she really started coming by every day and would chat with the spirits or help him with a few chores here and there. And so Ed is extremely grateful to her. As he complimented her, she turned her head to hide her red face. But she soon turned back, with her demeanor shifted as she asked how often Lucy comes to his cabin. It is at times like this that Ed really does not understand her. In any case, she is guest 2, and the main reason Ed brought this up is guest 3. She is Lortle, the Golden Daughter. She is the mastermind behind the incidents in Act 2 of the game. She was most likely recruiting useful individuals for her Ophelis Hall occupation plot, but he really did not want to get involved. He decided to reject her offer no matter what. If we just stay out of it, everything will go according to the story. But his eyes widened as he realized that things were in fact not going according to the story. Lordle mentioned that she had no choice but to come this far because Tot had fainted. He instantly leans forward and asks her to tell him everything. In the original plot, Tot was supposed to pick a fight with Taylor and get beaten up just enough. He would have mocked the protagonist for being taken out by one blow from Lucy. His next line was that he is nothing but an insect who is even worse than Ed Rothsteiler, and that is when Tot gets punched by an enraged Ziggs. Elvira said she never saw Ziggs so angry, though it was unclear whether he was defending Taylor or Ed. Lordle says she cannot put her trust in someone so temperamental and wants to ask Ed for this favor. Apparently, she had come to Ed because his reputation is already so poor. Ed says he is not interested in revenge, but he is willing to listen to her offer. He knows he just has to play it loose before the story gets derailed. To set it straight, he agrees with Lordle's proposition. The occupation of Opheles Hall happens before the battle for the Sage's sealed tome. This is Lordle's scheme to drive the Academy's finances into a corner. In other words, it leads into the next chapter of the game. According to the game's plot, Lordle's plan succeeds, and she creates her own company within the Academy for profit, which serves to hold Princess Peenia and the Student Council in check. The idealistic Student Council against the pragmatic company. The important thing here is that whoever Taylor sides with will win, and all Ed has to do is join whichever side seems like it will win. He has to be realistic. He gets cut off from his thoughts as Yennecar warns that it is raining and she should get back to her dorm. She expresses that it must be hard for Ed, as he needs to stay out here even when it rains. Ed states that it is not so bad once you get used to it. Yennecar talks about getting her things out of Opheles Hall soon, as break is almost over. She smiles, encouraging him to let her know if he needs anything. She rambles on about how she has some extra blankets, pillows, a clock, and a lantern she can give him. She continues chattering that throwing them away would be a waste and a lot of effort. Ed smiles affectionately, saying it sounds good. Yennecar cheers, promising to bring it over once the semester starts and she leaves Opheles Hall. She then turns to Lucy and asks if she's always like this. Ed replies sometimes. The ridiculous amount of power Lucy possesses certainly comes with a price. She has been running from her fate with the excuse that she is too lazy. It has been years since she turned her back on her destined fate. But on a rainy day like this, even someone as carefree as Lucy is forced to reflect on her decisions. Ed tells Yennecar not to worry about her, as she acts like that when it rains. Instead of worrying, Yennecar is made happier by his response, as it shows he is really indifferent when it comes to Lucy. As Ed thinks about it, he remembers that Yennecar is still at Opheles Hall for now. Once the occupation of the hall begins, numerous ward spells are activated, trapping all of the students in their rooms. Ed thinks someone like Yennecar can easily make it out herself. He asks her for a favor, telling her to come to the Rose Garden in front of Opheles Hall tomorrow around 9 o'clock at night. He says he will explain why when he sees her there. Yennecar blushes, deducing more meaning from his words than necessary. Ed really cannot think of any way to explain it, so he decides to just get her out of that hall. Still flushed, Yennecar bids him goodbye and swiftly leaves. Ed sighs deeply. The rain will not stop until the first day of the semester. He will be able to see clear blue skies after that, and the forest will begin to smell like fall. The scene shifts to Ziggs training himself. To prevent himself from getting swept up by any anger, he would not have been concerned about it until Elka got upset. While training, he looks outside the window and sees a hooded figure rushing towards Opheles Hall. It was Ed Rothsteiler. Upon questioning, he is told all of the staff has been gathered by the head maid with the excuse of making an important announcement. Ed knows the plan is to lock the door and wrap them in there. Everything is much easier since the head maid has been bought off by Lordle. The maid guides Ed inside and leaves an item that he had requested. Everything is in place now. With that, the occupation of Opheles Hall began. The enraged students gathered outside the hall, protesting with all their might. Their frontman was the representative, Willing. They were shocked as the hall's doors opened and all of the underachieving students made their way inside. Willing is shocked to see that the person Laughter recruited for the task was none other than Ed Rothstaler. Ed feigns an act, telling Willing that he has always agreed with the things he has been advocating for and finally realized just how privileged his life has been. Willing turns teary-eyed, saying that he's such a fool for judging Ed unfairly based on nothing but rumors. He continues yapping, which causes Ed to push him forth, telling him to go upstairs. He reminds himself continuously that Willing has to be the one to take on all of the blame, internally apologizes, but hopes he keeps fighting for his beliefs. He also thinks there is no need to go after the maid who is running away. The higher-ups she is trying to report to should be locked in the meeting room already anyway. Elris, the head maid who wields the highest authority here and controls the ward spells, has been bought out by Lortle. Therefore, the spell supposed to protect the students actually locked them in their rooms. Everything is going according to the story. Finally, the mastermind behind all this chaos approaches Ed, taking the stage. She says that things have started out much flashier than she thought. She smiled, saying she knew she could trust Ed. Lortle tells Ed that they will have to be quick and get things going before the academy staff begins to intervene. She then says that this might sound like a strange question, but has he ever killed anyone? Ed turns quiet for a while and then denies it. Lortle laughs and says she has also never killed anyone, but she has done a lot of things that are almost as bad to survive. In order to survive, Lortle ruined the lives of others, and to avoid getting stabbed in the back, she did so first. She told herself that it was all inevitable and that her actions were justified, but really that was just an excuse. That was how Lortle came to be called the Golden Daughter. She knows better than anyone else that she has no right to be pitied, and so she keeps searching for others like her. And so she questions Ed if he would pity someone like that. Loneliness is a feeling that can come to anyone, regardless of whether they're good or bad. In order to escape it, one must find others rolling around in the same mud pit. Only when they find someone to be at their side, even in the deepest of pits, can they find salvation. But of course, Ed Rothstaler is not that someone, and so he denies, telling Lortle coldly that she needs to take responsibility for her actions. Lortle smiles, apologizing for saying something so out of character. She says she will get going and do her part now, as there is not much time left. Ed sighs as he sits down on a nearby chair. He knows Lortle is about to discuss the next stage of the plan with Elris. They will decide to aggravate the situation by overloading the ward spells in Ophelis Hall, after handing over the trigger to Willing, the representative of the underachieving students. And Willing, after receiving all of the magic power contained in the countless ward spells throughout the hall, becomes the fourth-floor boss. The key to this fight is taking down Willing as soon as possible, as he is overtaken by the overloaded spells. All Ed needs to do now is wait for Taylor to barge in. Once Ed holds them off for a bit before letting them win, Taylor will proceed upstairs. Ed doubts he can get through this scuffle without a few injuries and bruises, but that is a necessary sacrifice. In the meanwhile, a carriage arrives at the Rose Garden. Yennecar, who was already waiting in the garden for Ed, noticed this and wondered who must be here this late at night. She wonders if she needs to leave. Ed had left a note for her behind, making her wonder if he could be preparing something for her. The golden carriage did not matter. The girl was not going to leave the Rose Garden no matter what. She had hardly slept the past 3 days trying to imagine what the boy wanted to discuss. Though she felt guilty about it, Yennecar continuously heard about how Ed was doing from Merelda. Lucy was not the only one. Princess Peenia, Belle Maya, Ziggs, and even Lortel were sighted leaving his camp. The fact that most of them were girls made things worse. And so, Yennecar decided to wait no matter how long it took. As time passed by, she began to question the choice of wearing a persimmon flower clip. She decides to just run upstairs really quick and change it. She headed towards Ophelis Hall. On the other hand, Elvira, Taylor, and Isla stood outside Ophelis Hall. Elvira was panicking about the expensive medicinal herbs she hung to dry in her room. She didn't want to wait for the academy's staff to take care of this matter. And so she could not be stopped, so she breaks down the door and goes in. To the three's utter shock, Ed Rothstaler sat on a chair right in front of them. Taylor instantly becomes alert and asks what he is doing here. Elvira looks around and observes that it is clear the students have passed through this place already. The furniture has been upturned, and he has got his back to the stairs. She smiled, saying she did not expect that he would be planning to stop them. Ed apologizes, saying that they cannot get past this point. Elvira smirks and laughs, asking if he actually has any way of stopping her. She reminds him that it does not matter how good he is at magic. In the end, he is just a second-year student who can cast nothing but basic spells. She boasts that they have got a pretty talented sword fighter and a mage with at least average skills for a first year, as well as an alchemist who is at the top of her class. Taylor questions Ed, demanding that he tell him what's going on upstairs, but Ed doesn't respond, so Taylor charges at him with his sword. Ed tosses a table his way, but he manages to dodge it. Elvira stares at the man. Judging by that flow of mana, she could tell it is beginner's magic. As a mage who is weak in melee magic, she knew he would go for Taylor. But she is struck with surprise as Ed uses Wind Slash to cut off the chandelier's chain above Taylor. Taylor manages to dodge it barely. Clevius was panicking, wondering what's going on. Elvira had definitely underestimated Ed Rothsteller, but he doesn't stop here. He continues using his Wind Slash magic, taking Elvira by surprise by cutting off some strands of her hair. This sudden surprise attack causes her to drop her bag with her herb potions. She tries to discreetly reach out for one of them. However, Ed uses the Ignite spell to cast it away and set fire to the place. Seeing the battlefield set, Elvira knew things had taken a worse turn. Unlike her expectations, Ed Rothsteller was precise and quick. She curses Ziggs for not telling her that it's just not Ed's magic skills that are good. As the top alchemy student, Elvira is the strongest one on their side. The critical weakness of the alchemy department is that they barely have any combat skills without relying on magic items or reagents. Most of the alchemy students carry around magic items in the form of rings or necklaces, just in case. But Elvira never expected a genius like her to need something like that, and she could not be bothered. As she thinks more about it, she finds the possibility of Ed knowing all of this even more shocking. She wonders if he made the chandelier drop and put up a wall of fire just to target her bag. But then he would have just targeted her, not the bag. She shoots death glares at him, reminding herself that he is just Ed Rothsteller. Determined, she takes out a portion from her pocket. She decides to imbue it with fire resistance and berserk mode, and then with more strength. In the meantime, Isla tries using water magic to put out the fire, but to her astonishment, the fire magic was too strong and backfired. But Taylor comes to her rescue, telling Isla to get it together. Isla might be confident in her knowledge of magic, but in terms of combat, she is still just an ordinary first-year student learning beginner spells. He curses Edfer for keeping going after Isla, which makes it difficult for them to get close. Elvira creates an opening for Taylor to get closer. She, on the other hand, drapes a cloak over her and rushes towards her babies. However, Ed targets his Wind Slash magic at her. Elvira smiles calmly while kissing her potion. She then throws it at his Wind Slash. The potion contained a special reagent made out of chopped-up night butterfly flowers and arrowroot mushrooms and was imbued with a magic release spell. Its effect is to restrict the release of mana and the temporary neutralization of anything created by magic. And so the raging fire immediately disappears. Taylor ends up killing Elvira's beast with a sword. But she knew he was now a mage who could not use magic at all. To the three shocks, Ed begins to flee. He blocks their path and topples over Oil, causing another fire to get started. The three become concerned, knowing if the fire spreads to hallways, people could get hurt. Taylor says he can slash through any fire with his elemental flash attack, whether it be made of magic or spread through oil. And so he was determined to put an end to this before anyone got hurt. But Elvira stops him as he observes that the windows are opened enough for the smoke to escape, and it looks like the rugs and anything else that is flammable have all been put away. She knew this was all part of Ed Rothsteller's carefully calculated plan, but before she could stop Taylor, it was too late. Taylor sees Ed aiming a bow at him. However, it was meant for Isla all along, who can't even use a basic defense spell right now. In the nick of time, Elvira manages to use Claw Fingers to stop the arrow. Claw Fingers is a magic engineering tool, allowing the user to pull any small item towards themselves, no matter how far it is. Elvira remains dazed as she sees the arrow has a ball of fabric in place of an arrowhead. Turns out Ed was going easy on them. She tells Taylor to watch out, as Ed still has something up his sleeve. The two clashed again, face to face, in the kind of duel that screams main character tension and insurance liability at the same time. Then came a distant crash from the first floor, the kind of sound that says, Act 2's boss just clocked in for work. Clevius's panicked voice echoed, declaring their imminent deaths. His anxiety had finally achieved its ultimate form, cardio. He bolted from his room like a man who just remembered an unpaid rent. Ed sighs in relief. But this wasn't over for him. But peace never lasts long when you're surrounded by protagonists who think tactics means yell and run forward. Taylor shoved him, grabbed his collar, and demanded answers, because nothing resolves tension like physical assault mid-apocalypse. Elvira hated every second of it. The entire scene felt like a badly directed stage play, except Ed was both the director and the guy quietly rewriting everyone's scripts on the fly. If he had really intended to stop them, he would have ambushed them by dropping the chandelier without showing himself. But he was sitting here waiting for them, and during the fight, he showed no hesitation or lack of experience. This made her certain that something is definitely off. Ed calmly asks if they are done. He tells them to stop yapping and get upstairs already. This astonishes the other three main characters. Taylor points out that he was just fighting so hard to stop them. Elvira grits her teeth in fury and asks why he was going so easy on them. She says she will not let this go and demands an answer. On the other hand, the persimmon flower clip was what Yennecar decided on after endlessly contemplating over her choices. No one could possibly mock her innocent devotion. Even if it was all just a misunderstanding, she was free to imagine whatever she wanted. But the gap between those happy dreams and harsh realities can sometimes be very cruel. Life, ever the realist, loves to slap dreams across the face. The boy she imagined appearing at the gazebo, dressed nicely, was on his back, covered in blood after getting ambushed by villains. As soon as she sees the sight, her demeanor darkens and her eyes fill with rage as she coldly questions what they are doing. That was the look of someone realizing the romantic subplot had officially turned into revenge arc.